Looking back on the first 2 hours, it's not accidental the way we programmed it. We're trying to make a point, and we're trying to paint a picture for you here. And sometimes you paint a picture by connecting the dots. So let's connect the dots a little bit on what we've learned and discussed so far today. We talked to Mark Ames of Pando Daily about what he calls the tectopus. That sounds a little bit to me like a transformer married a Snuffleupagus and they had a child. But what he means by that, he's referring to the octopus, the Frank Norris classic novel about the way industrial centralization and power corrupts every aspect of life. We talked with Mark about how the Silicon Valley firms, led by some very unethical behavior from Steve Jobs and other corporate leaders, Eric Schmidt at Google, really conspired to fix the wages and job opportunities of hundreds of thousands of workers, perhaps as many as a million, illegally, and did that with no fear of punishment. Obviously, they did it in secret, but it's been reported. There are no apparent threats of retaliation right now. So we talked about the corporate cartel that is the Silicon Valley. Then a little later in the program, we talked with Patrick Ruby, who's a great voice for sports we like to have on the show. And Patrick, who writes for Sports on Earth, we discussed with us his reporting on the NCAA controversy going on, and specifically the students that have been organizing as a union, not so much to negotiate over wages, although there's perhaps no reason why they shouldn't do that, but to talk about issues that are getting neglected, of preventing brain damage, of aiding students who suffer concussions or other brain injuries, of controlling the use of student likenesses currently managed by the NCAA. The NCAA makes an enormous amount of money, and yet you don't hear that talked about in March Madness. And if you press back, they say, well, we spend 90% of our money for the student athletes, but most of that money, or a huge chunk of it, goes to new buildings, new programs for the university, and to enormous salaries for athletic directors and coaches. So we talked about the cartel that is the NCAA. Excuse me. We talked to Robbie Sherwood in Arizona about how ALEC, the Koch brothers funded corporate lobbying group, although they deny they lobby, influence manipulation group, took a group of ALEC legislatures out for a lavish steak dinner, and how they influence state policy. And then we kind of talked about the outcome of all of this, which is that at the federal level, at the local level, state level, that is, corporations are paying historically low levels of taxes, amounts of taxes, and just 10% of what they should be paying would give us 100,000, excuse me, a million teachers. So if they were paying taxes at the Richard Nixon era level, they'd be able at the state and federal levels to create more than 5 million new jobs. So the government is starving for money. The economy is suffering. The public is suffering because corporations are able to manipulate their way out of paying taxes. You get the thread here. The thread is that corporations and wealthy individuals have way too much power, that really the NCAA controversy, even, it's a matter of, as a society, as a nation, we've come to devalue the rights of people who work and produce for others to get fair compensation for their efforts and to have some control over their own destinies, whether it's foreclosure fraud, where banks are rescued by the government and then turn around and continue to illegally foreclose on people, whether it's the NCAA showing indifference to the fate of injured athletes, whether it's state legislatures offering tax breaks, even more tax breaks to corporations while we're in desperate need, and federal government as well, while we're in desperate need to repair our crumbling infrastructure, which is costing lives, to put people back to work, which is costing people's futures. It all ties together. It's all that great founding image that Occupy's movement gave to us. The 1% are really the 0.1% versus the 99%, or in all reality, the 99.5%, if you want to get technical about it. Our mission has to be to restore justice and balance. And that involves activism, which we promote here, that involves awareness, which we promote here, but it also involves a cultural shift back to the way we felt as a society in our heyday, economically and socially, when we were making progress in all the right directions, which is Everybody has a say in the society. Everybody has a right to their place in the society. You don't have to be an oligarch to influence politics. You just have to be a citizen with the power of the pen and the power of the vote. That's the mindset we need to reinforce. That's the culture we need to rebuild so that we can make permanent and lasting change, whether it's in the law courts or on the basketball courts. I'm RJ Eskow, and we'll be back after this. This is the Zero Hour.